Oh.
So I'm a musician, and when I first started attending the davening services at the major Breslov shul around here, I noticed something interesting about the songs that they sing afterward. That they all feel better if you clap on beats 2 and 4. I as a musician, my primary training was in jazz, and I played like jazz gigs, and it's like if somebody doesn't clap on 2 and 4, it's like they don't know what's going on in the music, right? So it's a clapping on 2 and 4. When people at my Shabbos table have asked me to teach a niggin, and I teach one of the Breslov songs that I've learned where it feels better if you clap on 2 and 4, I often get the comment that, well, that was funky. It's not always a comment you get about a niggin. And maybe that was deep, or Ki Omarti Olam Chesed. I'm clapping on 2 and 4.
As opposed to 1 and 3.
Ki Omarti right away you say, and whether that's one of those things about clapping on 2 and 4 is that no matter what your level of musical training, you can tell when it feels better to clap on 2 and 4. It's like deeply rooted in the human soul. They call Rebbe Nachman Uman Nefesh the craftsman of the soul. He knows it from the bottom up. He knows what beats to clap on in the songs.
He actually talks about which beats to clap?
No, I have not seen that in writing, but I have noticed it about nearly every Breslov song that I've learned. Yeah, so I came across a very strange Mishnah the other day that said that the things that were created on the first and third day of creation are able to receive impurity, and the things that are created on the second and fourth day, 2 and 4, are not able to receive impurity, which stood out to me as interesting given the clapping on 2 and 4 thing. But another thing about that Mishnah is that, what was created on the second and fourth day? Well, the sky and the sun and the moon.
The heavens.
Like, so like I would think that I'm going to make the sun impure. I looked through all the classical commentaries and have found no answer to this question. There are many passages in the ancient texts. Many of them are explained at great length and in great depth, and we've learned out laws and moral lessons from them. And others are still a little bit of a mystery. The ancient texts are very dense. There's a lot of content in every word. So it should not be so big of a novelty when we say that there were 18 stories told by he was the main character in these stories, the ancient sage Rabba Bar Chana, and they're very bizarre stories. They don't seem to convey any clear laws. They don't, I haven't seen commentaries that learn out laws from them. They don't seem to have a lot of moral substance per se. They're just sort of strange stories. So the story goes that this sage, Rabba Bar Chana, came to Rebbe Nachman in a dream, a series of dreams. And first, Rabba Bar Chana was upset that no one was teaching about his stories. No one was teaching the lessons in his stories. Well, maybe that's because no one understands the messages in your stories. So then he came to Rebbe Nachman in a series of dreams and explained to Rebbe Nachman these stories and said, now it's your job to explain these to the human race. So these, I believe it's 18 stories, and they are the basis for the first 15 lessons in Likutey Moharan. And so I'm mentioning this because we have reached the turning point in this lesson where we've gotten the concept, and now we're going to learn the concept in another way with Rebbe Nachman's explanation of this previously not super understood story.
Could you summarize the concept very quickly for us?
Sure. The concept being that the things that we like and the things that we're worried about in the world are in a fallen state. I think anybody could even think for themselves, or I wouldn't even make you do that. Just think about things that other people like and other people are worried about that you think maybe that's not so really worthy of you liking or really worthy of you worrying about. There are things you should like instead that are more important to like, and things that you should be worried about that are more important to worry about. So I think anybody can see clearly that the likes and dislikes of the world are in a fallen state. So Rebbe Nachman here teaches us how to begin to rectify that. Think about how much better the world would be if only people liked and worried about the correct things that actually had substance to them. People could work on improving their personality traits rather than celebrity magazines or something like that. That's just off the top of my head an example. I don't know, maybe there is something great about celebrity magazines and I just haven't realized it. But my criticism of the world, and I'm sure we all have one, is that maybe people could focus more on developing good personality traits in place of maybe other less valuable activities. So that's just one example. The basic technique is to look upon the intelligence in all things, which means to perceive before judging, to take in some information before I just decide if I like or don't like the situation, but then not to trip out on that, on looking for information. I'm not just like looking at a rock and wow, it's so deep, it's atoms, man. That's not the point. Once I've determined some information about this thing, I can determine whether it's really good, it's really worthy of, should I like it, should I dislike it, how should I regard this thing, how should I work with this situation, because the point is that we keep moving and that we elevate the situation. When we elevate the situation to be more true, that the likable things and dislikable things in the situation are more based on truth and less based on impulse, we're bringing the whole situation closer to Hashem, ourselves included. Hashem put this intelligence in all things around us so that we would have we'd have a handle by which to lift up the world. Okay, so I'll leave that as a brief summary of the concept, and now we'll go through the story. One thing worth emphasizing is that so far Rebbe Nachman has focused primarily on the likable and not discussed as in depth the things people are worried about. He takes the word chen, which I'm translating here as likability, and he breaks it down into its Hebrew letters, which is sort of the building blocks of reality, and according to Kabbalah. The first letter, ches, stands for chachma. It's just the information, the whatness of things. Well, what is it before I decide if I like it or not? That's what the word chachma means. Power of what? Koyach ma. It's just the whatness of the thing. The raw information about it that I can stop and appreciate for a second. And then nun, the second letter of Cain, just to say the concepts quickly, is opening my heart to accept this information, setting aside for a moment my predisposed ideas. Not that we're saying predisposed ideas are always bad necessarily, but I can just set them aside for a minute and I'll get some new information that I would not have gotten if I had not cleaned my glasses, so to speak, of my predisposed ideas. Okay. So now we're going to learn the same lesson from another angle. So first let's understand the simple meaning of the story. Bar Chana was on a boat at sea. And a big wave came toward the boat. And it seemed like this was a wave that it could sink the boat. The way that the words work here, it's almost as though the wave was intending to sink the boat, like it had some sort of an agenda. There's a bizarre implication about things at sea, about the motions of the sea. It's not an animal or anything, it's just water. But anyway, it was like coming to sink the boat. And there was something unusual about this wave, that it had a spark of white fire on top of the wave. One of the few explanations we get of this story prior to Likutey Moharan says that the white fire was a harmful angel. An angel, but a harmful angel. Okay, and so what did Rabba Bar Chana do? They had a stick, they had a staff, and on the staff was engraved one of the names of Hashem. I'm going to say it in a way to account for the fact that it's a name of Hashem, Ekyeh Asher Ekyeh. Just to give us a little bit of context about this name. When Moshe Rabbeinu was in Egypt, Hashem first came to him to tell him, hey, you're going to get everybody out of this slavery situation, and you're going to tell You're going to tell the Pharaoh stuff, and you're going to tell your people that Hashem came to you and spoke to you and told you stuff. And Moshe's like, I'm going to go tell people God told me stuff, and they're going to believe me? You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, oh, who's this Hashem? What's his name? Hashem, we say respectfully, but Hashem literally means the name. Yeah, what name? So Hashem's answer to him is, well, Ekyeh, the Shem Ekyeh, which means the simplest way I could translate that phrase is, I will be what I will be. You'll see. You'll see later what my name really is. Tell him that. Tell him it's a name that you'll figure out as you develop, as you get older. We've talked a little bit about the concept here that although we do want to find the wisdom in every situation, it doesn't mean we have to start with the most difficult possible situation to find the wisdom in. Start with easy stuff. You can start with stuff that we already have a decent grasp at appreciating. But we talked before about how there is someone that we regard as evil, who we would not be willing to give them the food off our plate. Like Yaakov was on the level, he could give the food off his plate to his patently evil brother Esav, and in doing so turn the situation around. Well, we learned this lesson also by Yosef, who all of the brothers of Yosef, they were all very righteous. So they all had very good reasons for the things that they did. And so we can actually investigate their reasons and go into their reasons. And so perhaps we can start this process by finding the intelligence in our friends, in our community, just the people around us who we already like. There's a piece of advice given about prayer that everybody believes that Hashem has the power to fulfill your prayers and listens to your prayers and stuff, but people don't believe in their own ability to pray. So if people increase their own ability to pray, then like Hashem's listening to your heart, not just your mouth. So if someone doesn't believe their own prayers, Hashem will account for what's going into their heart as well as what's going on in their words. Hashem searches every room of the inner workings of a person. Translation of the pasuk. So a way to increase our confidence in prayer is to pray for stuff that we know we're already going to get. And then we're going to make a choice to say, yeah, it's okay, but if it does the right thing, who cares if it's cheating? It's like people say learning a Gemara from an art school is cheating. But if you understand the Gemara, then okay, you understand it, great. Who cares how you came about that information? If you genuinely understand it after learning from the art school. So there's another factor here, which is a little bit more difficult than doing it, than just praying for something you're going to get already, although you do have to kind of get past this is a silly idea to do that. So there is a little bit of a hurdle to overcome, right? Go to the grocery store, I know they have, maybe I even go in and check they have milk, and then I come out, because maybe they don't have milk. Maybe they don't have the hechsher I want for the milk or something. So I daven for the milk. I daven that I will successfully purchase milk in the grocery store before going into the grocery store. And almost every time I go to the grocery store to purchase milk, I wind up purchasing milk successfully. It's not a tremendously complicated procedure. And then we have a choice to make. So as people who look into the information in things, we have choices about which explanation to accept for any given phenomena. This is very common in the Torah, that there will be multiple explanations for why a certain thing happened. And so we say, well, they're all true if the Rambam and the Ramban both say so. Well, they're both true. I'm not in a position to argue with either of these sages here, even though they contradict each other. So we can pick which explanation we're going to follow. We can say, either I went to the grocery store and bought milk because that's a normal thing, and they have milk, and just because nature says that you can do that. Or I could say, you know what, the prayer worked. I'm going to tell myself the prayer worked. We can pray for things that almost definitely going to happen, things like that. And then we can work our way up to realizing that, wow, some of the whatever major events in my life happen, and whatever major good things I see in the world and in the news or stuff, I'm going to tell myself that my prayers actually had a part of that. And this increases our confidence in prayer. So too we can increase our confidence in our ability to look into the intelligence of the things, and this is part of the meaning of Hashem telling Moshe that look, you're going to figure out down the road who I am, and that's what you need to tell the people also. We're not going to see the ultimate truth when we look into things right away. We shouldn't expect that, but just a little more, a little edge over what we currently have. That's all we need here to at this first stage, is a little edge. So now we're going to go into Rebbe Nachman's explanation of the story in more detail about the actual story elements. So the wave that comes to sink the ship, what's the wave? It's the Yetzer Hara. We're going to define Yetzer Hara in the context of this lesson as the temptation to say, nah, I don't need to look at it any better. I already know what's going on in this situation. And if it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. I'm going to judge it before I perceive it. Let's call that the Yetzer Hara. Because Rebbe Nachman teaches us, well, I'll read a little bit more first before saying it. What does it mean that the wave, that the Yetzer Hara wants to sink the ship? It means that it wants to lower the likability and concerns of the ship. It wants to lower them to things that aren't as worthy of likability and aren't as worthy of concern, which is what we get when we judge before perceiving. We just get what we're holding now we could increase our ability to make good decisions literally in any moment by just taking in a little bit more information. Not so much we trip out, just a little bit more. And then instant improvement. So the Yetzer Hara says no. And what it wants to do is sink that and over time lower our likes and dislikes more and more. Each time that we ignore the information, it's not a passive thing. It's not just I'm going to not choose to look. It's that I'm also choosing not to look. You can't have one without the other.
Say that last sentence again?
Yeah. I'll illustrate the concept a little bit more. There's no neutral. There's a story. There's two stories in Chumash and Nach about a town called Timnasa, where Yehuda went to Timnasa, and there it seemed like Timnasa was further down the hill, and Shimshon went to Timnasa, where it seems like it was further up the hill. So where is Timnasa? There's a discussion in the rabbinic writings that, well, it is in a militarily strategic place. So if it's at the top of the hill, well, that's a bit of a problem, because even though it's good for defense, it's terrible for trade. Because you got to go to the market and schlep all this stuff up the top. And if it's at the bottom, well, that's good for trade. You don't have to schlep as much. If you go to the market up the hill, you can carry the stuff downhill. But it's not good for military. If an enemy army comes, they can just go over the hill and totally just roll stuff down the hill. It's not a good place to be for that. So it must be in the middle of the hill. And then the lesson of being in the middle of the hill is that if you ride a bike and you're riding up a hill, you can't just stop pedaling. You don't stop, you go down. Okay. So this is one of the deceptions of the Yetzer Hara. It makes you want to think that, well, if I just don't look at the intelligence this time, I just won't get my little bonus points this time. But I won't be harmed by that. But Rebbe Nachman does not say that the wave intended to stall the ship. It says the wave intended to sink the ship. It doesn't say that it wants to not increase your chen and cheshivas, your likes and worries, but it wants to lower them. And so anytime that someone, now I'm going to say the sentence again that you asked me to say, if I don't choose to look into the intelligence in the situation, I am also choosing not to. There's no neutral. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the concerns side and more the things that I ought to respect and ought to take seriously, sort of this side of things. Rebbe Nachman said at the beginning of the teaching that we can get all our prayers answered with this stuff, so that sounds pretty cool. One example of that is just requests when we deal with other human beings. Before we talk about necessarily how we're going to deal with the eternal one here, but just with other human beings, that if we have likability, then people will listen to what we have to say, and they'll be happy that we entered the room and the room went away. But if we don't have respectability, they'll go, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to help you, and then not call it, and then not actually do anything. If someone has respectability, if they can actually get anybody to stand before them and not be scared away, and they tell people to do things, then people will actually do what they're told, because they're worried this person is going to, it'll be bad if I don't do what this person says, but everybody runs away when they come, so they have a hard time getting what they want actually. So someone has to have both of these qualities to get what they want. They have to be liked enough that people will stand there and talk to them, and they have to be respected, that people will take what they say seriously. And so we've talked about the like side of things a lot here. And now that the lesson has taken a somewhat darker of a turn here with this wave that wants to sink the ship, we have to talk about the respect side of things. So, Rebbe Nachman says that the word sefina, or sefinta, that means boat, is a language of safun, means hidden, chashuv means important. So there's a very interesting lesson here about what is to be respected and also what is to be, I guess, feared or concerned about. There's sort of two levels of intensity of the same thing. A lot of respect is called fear, right? A very small amount of fear is called respect. Okay, but they're on the same spectrum is the point. That there is something, there must be something hidden. Clearly we fear what we cannot see. Why do children need a nightlight? Why do people fear other people that they don't understand? They don't understand their culture or something. Why is it a bad strategy to have your city at the bottom of the hill? Because the enemies could come over the top of the hill, and then before you know it, they're on top of you. Right, so hidden results in fear. But at a less intense level, hidden also equals respect. Because why do people respect? Because they see that I have something to gain from this. There's something I don't know that this person knows. There's something that I really should, it would be worth my while to tune into this guy. Or to do what this guy is asking of me, to become closer to this guy. And when you start to look even a little bit deeper than you already look, instantly you have something hidden. You have a little thing that people are going to, what's going on with that guy? I want to talk to him and find out what he knows. And because I don't think that I know already what this guy seems to know now, I'm not going to talk over him. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I heard that before. Okay. So the Yetzer Hara wants to sink the boat. And as we've discussed before, the condition of the world is greatly modulated by how much people are concerned and like the right things. So this is the long-term goal of the Yetzer Hara. Maybe a person thinks, well, it's just little old me that the Yetzer Hara is trying to do in here by getting me to ignore the situation a little bit and be sort of dismissive. But no, actually, it'll affect the whole world. Okay, so now we're going to explain the next detail. And that's why we're using this metaphor of sinking the ship, because the ship is like the whole world, right? If you're on an island, if you're on land and a big wave comes, it might be a problem, but it's not going to destroy the island. That's kind of not really relevant. That's preposterous. But the boat, that's the whole world, man. We're supposed to believe that the whole world was created just for us, right? So what goes on with us modulates the world in a bigger way than we realize. You don't need to say anything supernatural to explain that statement. There's just the ripple effect. Right? The way I interact with somebody else, they're going to interact with somebody else that way, and so on and so forth. We have more cheshivus than we realize. Okay, so the next detail of the story is, what is the significance of this white flame that is on top of the wave that we're taught is referring to an angel who is harmful? And the truth is, according to Rebbe Nachman's explanation, the fact that it's a harmful angel is already explicit in the idea that it's a white flame. Well, white seems like, it's pure. Not necessarily, but Yaakov's tricky uncle's name literally was white. Lovin, right? That's the word for white. So it's an angel, it's pure, but also it's harmful. So what does this mean? So how does the Yetzer Hara approach someone? It's it approaches them disguised as a mitzvah, disguised as a good idea. I mean, the Yetzer Hara's goal here is to make us be dismissive and ignore the intelligence in things. And in doing so, that kind of works two ways. Like, if we start ignoring the intelligence in things, people will start ignoring the intelligence in us, like as has been explained in this lesson. So the Yetzer Hara will start off with an approach of, I already know what you're saying. And that sounds nice, actually. It sounds like, oh, you agree with me, great. But the problem is, when you say I already know, now there's no room for novelty. And as soon as I look at the thing and I see that it's exactly as it was before, I know that I'm missing something, that whatever Hashem put in it that day for me to see, especially to get novelty, I'm missing. I heard a story. There was a guy who he found a manuscript, and he said, "Oh, this is from the Talmud. It's a lost page of the Talmud." And he took it to a local rabbi, and the local rabbi analyzed it in sort of a structural way. He looked at the way the language was structured and the ideas, and said, "Wow, you know what? This does seem sort of authentic. Let's take this to the big court. Let's take this to the Beis Din." So they took it to the Beis Din, and the Av Beis Din, the leader of the court, he reviewed the sheet, and he read it a few times. He said, "Nope, it's fake, counterfeit." And it was, in fact, counterfeit. The guy was just he made his own Talmud page, and he wanted to, get famous off this or something. How do you know that it was fake, though? It tricked the other guy. So the head of the Beis Din, he says, "Well, I read it a few times, and it said the same thing every time." Yeah. A real page of Gemara is not like that. It's different every time you read it. You thought you had it memorized, you thought you understood. It's different somehow. I don't know. Did it change? Did Hashem change it when I wasn't looking? What's going on here? So this is the way that reality had ought to appear to us, that something is a little bit different. My teacher says that it's like you learn the same page of Gemara, and we're saying Gemara, we're also talking about reality here. And then you see a little path on the side. So it's sort of a nice visual, like, oh, I never saw that way out of the page before. It's one of the stories in the stories of Rebbe Nachman, that there's a guy who's looking for a princess, and he's looked everywhere, and then one day he's on this major road that he's been on many times, and he notices a side path. He didn't notice the side path before. So this is a major idea in Torah Beslev, is seeing like the little side path. And whether or not we follow it necessarily, we had ought to see the side path. That's the teaching here, is to make a point of seeing it, remember that it's there, possibly go down it if that's what's going to make sense in the situation. At least take a look. So the Yetzer Hara doesn't want us to do that. So it's going to say like this. Oh, sure, yeah, I see the side path too. That was there before. Really? Why didn't I see it? You weren't paying attention. Yeah, but you see it now. So maybe it was here before, but obviously now I see something new now. Okay, so how do we beat this Yetzer Hara that's approach is to sneak up on us by agreeing with us, seeming like it's helping us? It's the white flame. Ooh, it's the that's exactly what Lavan, the trickster uncle of Yaakov Avinu, did. He said, "Oh, you're my family. You should come stay with me, and I'll give you room and board, and I'm going to sign you up to work hard labor for 20 years for me." Oh wait, that little detail's in the fine print. So the Yetzer Hara that comes to agree with us. I'm not a great salesman, but I did undergo a sales training program, and I was told there that a major sales tactic is whatever objection the person says, I completely agree with you, say that, and then just say something completely contrary to what they just said that's going to sell them on. Because then they'll feel like their concern has been addressed, even though it has not really in any real way at all. And that's here, the Yetzer Hara, it took sales training. I'm not saying that salespeople are bad, just that the Yetzer Hara is a good salesman. The previous Rebbe of Chabad calls the Yetzer Hara a kluniger, the clever one. It says, I completely agree with you. that was there before, nothing to see here, folks. Move on with your day. And in doing so, sinks the ship. Okay, so what do we do about this guy? So then, Rebbe Nachman explains the detail about they had the staff on the ship, and the staff had Hashem's name on the staff. It's one of these names, specifically the one that means you'll know the answer later. Because with that information, you'll know the answer later. That gives you a reason to tune in. Oh, how about now? How about now I know the answer? How about now? There's different names of Hashem. There's a name of Hashem that corresponds to nature how it is. That name, not necessarily would you be looking for any novelty on that. You might be looking for a general way in which Hashem is running everything around us. It's called Hashgacha Klalis, general oversight.
Which name is that?
That would be the Shem Elokim, which is the same letters as Teva, which is the word for nature. And interestingly, Teva, the word for nature, is the same word that means sink the ship.
Teva is the ark, no?
It's a different spelling. There's also a word pronounced Teva, spelled with different letters, that refers to the Ark of Noah. And surely there is a connection between these concepts here, although it is beyond my spiritual pay grade to go into that subject, because I don't know enough about that connection. I'm sure you can find books on it. But it's spelled a different way. It's interesting. The word Teva, it's spelled with a tes. It means nature. It also means matba here, the word that the wave wants to sink the ship. It also means sink. A matbeya, spelled the same way, is also a coin. Do with that what you will. So that's one name of Hashem. Another name of Hashem is just completely beyond. The Shem Havaya, the classic four-letter name that we don't pronounce, is just completely beyond nature. There's a midrash that says all the other names of Hashem mean something in Hebrew. They have, like the word Elohim that we talked about refers to judges also. Judges are called Elohim. Like human judges who sit on court. But all of the other names, even this name we're talking about here, Ekyeh, is the future tense of like, Ehyeh b'shul, I'm going to be at shul later. It means I'm going to be. So Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to be what I'm going to be. And we know from the rabbis that that's actually Hashem telling Moshe a name of his. It happens to translate to I'm going to be what I'm going to be. The classic four-letter name doesn't have seemingly any meaning when translated into speech. And it is a hint to being completely beyond time. Before, the was, the is, and the will be, all in one thing. So that's combining the past, present, and the future all as one is sort of completely unrelatable. For most of us, a person could probably look at a rock so long that they start to kind of go out of their body and go out of time and space, and we're not necessarily advising to do that. In this case, we're talking about the name that says you will understand that reality one day. So that's it. I should say this about the four-letter name that is infinite. Well, that's just so unrelatable that I'm not ever going to look at things and say, do I get it yet? No, probably I'll never get it. It's beyond reality, and I live in reality. There's nothing that my mortal brain can do to understand the four-letter name of God. This other four-letter name, Ekyeh, and actually the full name is more than 4 letters, 11 letters, but this other name of Hashem that's relevant here is the one that I will understand at some point. That's what the name itself means. And so that keeps me interested. How about now? How about now? We should be asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because guess what? Are we there yet is a question that has an answer. We're this many miles away from, right? We're passing this highway exit now. This is a question that yields useful information. We've talked a little bit about, when we were talking about Yaakov and Esav, that why the Esav, is basically an evil character. And so the lesson would not be complete if Rebbe Nachman had stopped, which he didn't do, with teaching about Yaakov and Esav, because we're not allowed to ask about Esav. The question is, why did Esav do the evil things he does? This question is beyond us, and it will only drive us mad, and it won't help us. So not all questions are good to ask, but some questions are tremendously good to ask, such as, are we there yet? This name Ekye.
The question to answer a question does not have an answer that you can understand.
A question that will yield useful information is...
But you don't understand the information that's given to you. But you may not understand the information of why Esau was such a bad person.
Well...
Why Ishmael was such a bloody, thirsty person.
We can offer explanations, however, we won't be satisfied by these explanations. This is even if we think we can understand it, it's another Likutei Moharan where he teaches about questions that originate from the void. Before the world was created, Hashem cleared a void where the world is going to go, and the void is like nothingness. We're not advised to stare into the void, because staring into the void creates madness. And so to really get a good feeling for which questions are which is not a fast process, and I don't know that I've mastered that process by any means, knowing which questions are which, but it's something that I pay attention to. Is this a valid question or not? And so basically
productive question. Is it a productive?
Is it a productive question? Yeah, that's a nice way to say it. Is it a productive question? Think about it this way. If I understood why Esav did what he did, not understanding how to stop him, not understanding how to stop Yishmael, those are practical questions. If there's something I can do with the information, then that's a helpful question. Unless I'm Esav's therapist, but I'm probably not in that position in life. If I am, then it's something different. But for me, who's not Esav's therapist, it's not useful to me the mental processings of someone who is completely evil. Someone who is good and does something questionable, this is someone that I should understand, because I'm probably someone who thinks I'm good and does some questionable things. And so this would be more relevant to most of our day-to-day life. We don't go around saying we're all completely evil. Most of us are basically good, and we have some questionable things that... So,
in other words, you can't ask the question, why did God structure the world like this? Because he structured it like this.
Yeah.
So that's beyond asking, because that's...
Yeah. There's on that note, especially Hasidim, sort of the Bar Chana place a great emphasis on the telling of stories. And they would start to tell stories, and people would say, well, there's an inconsistency in the story. It seemed like the guy's motive was to go to the market, but then he went to the rabbi instead. So what was it? And the classic answer is, well, first of all, you didn't hear the whole story, so you got to hear the whole story. But what people say to get guys to be quiet and listen to the story is, you can't ask a question of the story. Meaning that, look, this is the axiom here. This is the story that we're given. Right? We can't ask a question of the Chumash, well, maybe that's not what actually happened. Maybe actually, Esav was the good guy. And no, that's not the story of the Torah. That's a different story you're asking about. So that would be an example of, maybe Esav was actually doing good things in the field, and we just didn't understand his motives. But that's not the simple meaning. That's a very difficult explanation. But we do have plenty of rabbinic writings that indicate the greatness of all the brothers of Yosef. So these are people that we can look into. So, are we there yet is a valuable format for a question. It's a novelty that we're learning this, because we might think it's not, because, we never are. It is an infinite thing here. We'll always be able to, we can always go deeper asking the question, are we there yet? But every time, here's the novelty here. Don't worry, it's still a good question, because it will yield information about where you're holding in your day. Rebbe Nachman says that, there's a story where there's someone who's very wise, and he presents his wisdom, and someone else who's maybe wiser says, how did you become so wise? He said, I learned it all in one day. He said, yeah, which day? Which day? Because every day is different. So once we think we've mastered it, well, the next day it's got something new, something different. Even if it looks exactly like it did before, right? That's the Yetzer Hara that wants to sink the ship, that makes us want to think that it's something different, that it's something exactly the same as it was before. No, every day it's different. This is one expression of infinity. Many expressions of infinity. Outer space, how long is the table? How many inches? How many centimeters? How many atoms? How many quarks? Well, infinity is how long the table is, right? You could keep going. Once you think you found the smallest particle, give scientists 100 years, they'll find something smaller than the thing you've heard of. So the answer is infinity. There are many expressions of infinity in our day-to-day life, and that can drive a person mad, or a person can figure out how to relate to that in a useful way. So one question is, are we there yet? No, where are we holding? What's going on specifically in this situation? Okay. And this is a question that will help us to defeat the Yetzer Hara that wants us to be dismissive. This is the question that is the staff that Rabba Bar Chana had on his ship, that he was able to use to break up this wave that was going to sink the ship. And so we started to go into the meaning of this interesting story. And we've also started to explain the concept of importance. There's something hidden, right? There's always something hidden in the next day, in the next moment. This is the question, are we there yet? This is the name of Hashem, Akia Asher Akia.
Shkaya.
To be continued.